who's actually going to get the most out of a 15-inch touchscreen laptop that's trying to double as a gaming machine? If you're a student who needs a solid workstation for spreadsheets, design projects, and occasional multiplayer sessions, you might be wondering whether the HP 15.6-inch model can keep up without blowing your budget. On the flip side, a hardcore gamer with a love for ultra-high frame rates and a desire for a silent room might ask if the same machine is worth the price tag compared to a dedicated desktop or a more aggressively spec'd gaming laptop. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've been digging through a mix of HP's own performance claims, third-party benchmark snapshots, and a handful of buyer comments that focus on real-world usage. The biggest hesitation people have with a laptop like this is the balance between its business-grade hardware and the expectations of a gaming experience. The processor, an Intel 10-core i7-1355U that can boost up to 5 GHz, sounds impressive on paper, but the real question is whether a user's chip can sustain that speed when you're pushing graphics for an hour-long raid. Likewise, the Iris-Say graphics are marketed as enhanced rendering, but they sit a step below the dedicated GPUs you usually find in true gaming rigs. Let's start with the display because that's where the touchscreen factor actually matters. The 15.6-inch FHD panel offers 10-point multi-touch and even comes with a stylus, which is a nice bonus for digital artists or anyone who likes to annotate PDFs on the fly. In practice, the brightness peaks around 300 nits, which is decent for indoor use but can wash out a little under bright sunlight. The color gamut is roughly sRGB wide, so you'll get accurate colors for photo editing, but you won't see the deep contrast you'd expect from a higher-end gaming display with higher refresh rates. For most indie games or titles that don't rely on ultra-smooth motion, the 60Hz panel does the job, but you'll notice the occasional stutter in fast-paced shooters that demand 144 Hz. Heat is where the conversation gets interesting. Because the i7-1355U is a low-power chip, it doesn't generate the same thermal load as a Core i7H series, but the Iris-Say still pushes the thermal envelope when you enable higher graphics settings. In my testing, after about 30 minutes of continuous gameplay in titles like Valorant and Minecraft, the laptop's surface warmed to a comfortable 38°C, but the fans kicked in at a noticeable whine. The noise level sat around 42 dB, which is audible in a quiet room but not outright distracting. If you're planning marathon gaming sessions on a couch, you might find the fan curve a bit aggressive, especially because the chassis is fairly thin and doesn't have the massive heat pipes you see in bulkier gaming laptops. Keyboard feel is another practical consideration. HP kept the traditional island-style keys with a shallow travel distance. The tactile feedback is adequate for typing long essays or writing code, but it falls short for gamers who rely on a more pronounced click for rapid key presses. The backlighting is single-zone white, which is useful if you're working late in a dim dorm, yet it doesn't offer the RGB flair that many gaming laptops brag about. If you value a quiet, low-profile typing experience over flashy lighting, you'll be fine. Otherwise, you might feel a little underwhelmed. Battery life is often the make-or-break factor for a laptop that's supposed to serve both work and play. HP rates this model at around 89 hours for mixed usage, and in my real-world tests, I logged roughly 7 hours of web browsing, document editing, and a few short gaming clips before the charger kicked back in. When you crank up the graphics for an extended gaming session, the battery drops to about 4 hours, which is typical for any laptop with a dedicated graphics workload. If you need a machine that lasts a full day of classes and can still squeeze in an evening of gaming without a wall outlet, you'll have to plan for a power break or keep a charger handy. Portability is a mixed bag. The 15.6-inch screen gives you a comfortable amount of real estate for multitasking, but the overall weight hovers around 4.2 pounds. That's heavier than the ultralight ultrabooks you might find for pure productivity, yet it's still manageable for a college student who carries a backpack daily. The thin bezels make the laptop feel slightly more compact than the dimensions suggest, but the added weight from the 2 TB SSD and 64 GB of RAM means you'll feel it on longer walks across campus. Now, let's talk money. The price point sits in the mid to high range for a 15-inch laptop with these specs, edging close to where you could buy a desktop with a more powerful GPU for the same cost. If you compare it to a dedicated gaming laptop that sports an RTX 3060 or higher, you'll notice a gap in raw graphics horsepower. However, you're also paying for a full Windows 11 Pro license, a built-in privacy camera with a physical shutter, and HP's enhanced lighting stack that automates screen brightness and color.